Welcome everybody to the September meeting, the end of September meeting of the Project Management Community Group. Just a few logistics and housekeeping things before we get started. Just a reminder, if you happen to be on the phone or on your computer, please leave yourself on mute. If you are on the phone, do not put us on hold. If you have any questions, we'll be getting to the questions at the end of the session, so feel free to enter them in the chat window and our presenters will get to them. This session is being recorded, and we will also be sharing the recording and the presentation on our new Connect platform. Today's your hosts are the co-leads of the PMGC, myself, and John Preddy. Okay, my name is Lisa Fellows, and I'm from Bucknell University, and John is from George Mason University. Our presenters today are from the University of Notre Dame, Michelle Johnson and Sharon Hayward. So a few announcements before we get started. We want to encourage you all, if you haven't already, to check out the new Educause Connect platform. It's our new online community. Please, we have lots going on out there, discussions. We have a growing library of resources, event information, and more. We're going to be slowly transitioning our current website and resources into this platform. So if you haven't checked it out, please go out and just go to connect.educause.edu and you can search for project management. You can explore the other community groups that are out there. It's a really nice new platform. So we wanted to remind you that the PMCG will be at Educause in Philadelphia in October in lieu of our regular monthly webinar. Just another quick note that early bird pricing ends tomorrow. So if you were thinking of registering and haven't yet, you might want to hop on there. We will be having two formal sessions, one on Wednesday morning right at the beginning of the conference at 8 a.m. That's our annual meeting. And then we're going to be doing a poster session where you can learn more about us at 4:15 p.m. If you're going to be an online attendee, we're also going to host an online poster session on Wednesday at 1:15 Eastern time. So we hope to see you at one of them. So for now, I will introduce Michelle Johnson and Sharon Hayward, both from the University of Notre Dame. They're going to be our keynote speakers. I will turn off my share and let you hop on there to share. Okay.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharon Hayward, as she said, from the University of Notre Dame, and I'm one of the lead project managers in our PPMO. I've been doing project management for 15 years, and before that, I was an elementary school teacher and did some recruiting as well. So this is kind of my third career maybe, but been doing it for 15 years and excited to talk to you today about how we're looking at methodologies and hybrid methodologies.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Johnson, also with the University of Notre Dame. I'm currently the manager of the software and platform management team, and I previously was the lead project manager in the PMO. I've been doing project management for over 20 years. I refuse to count after I hit the 20-year mark. And Sharon and I did this presentation a couple years ago at the PMI Global Conference in Chicago. And so we're very excited to be able to share it with you today. So we are going to get started. So in 2008, Notre Dame started down our Agile journey. Since then, we've incorporated Agile practices into projects, operations, and for some even personally. What we've learned through this is that there is no one right way. Instead, we have to be agile about using Agile and other traditional methods. As a result, and with collaboration in the PMO and our BAs, we developed a decision tool and information matrix to assist our PMs in selecting which methodology or methodologies fit their project needs. Please join us now as we explore the methodology journey down the yellow brick road. And as Glinda said, it is always best to start at the beginning. We'll now start off our roots in Kansas. If you Google project methodologies or read about them in a textbook, you will find lists of today's most commonly used with descriptions that imply a project manager can apply one and run the project from start to finish using the described guidelines. We are calling those who strictly adhere to one methodology purists. Purists are those who follow clear-cut rules and guidelines for managing their project and where everything is generally seen in black and white. We have chosen to include in today's presentation the 4 methodologies most used at Notre Dame. There are others that you may be using, such as Critical Path, Prince2, and Extreme Programming that we did not include, but which could be applied to the tools we will present today. The 4 methodologies included in this presentation are Waterfall, Scrum, Kanban, and Lean DMAIC. How many of you started your career learning the project management methodology and spent hours in a Microsoft project file? I know I did. How many of you still use pure waterfall? As we know, the typical waterfall process has defined phases, which may or may not have formal gates for approving the move to the next part of the project. There is a focus on thorough planning up front so that the team can go through design and implementation without constant customer involvement. This focus up front to plan and structure the project is meant to reduce risk and uncertainty in later phases. We see Dorothy Gale, a Kansas girl who followed the rules and heads home when told by Professor Marvel to embody our waterfall approach, looking for approval along the way as she moves into each new phase of her journey. Our next methodology is Kanban, which originated in Japan and is an Agile methodology. How many of you have used Kanban boards on some walls with sticky notes or even an electronic tool like Trello? Our initial exposure to Kanban consisted of hallways with colorful Kanban boards adorning the walls. At different times of the day, one would duck past a team gathered around their board having a meeting. I mean, I don't know how they don't lose all those stickies. Kanban allows these teams to review their work items represented on the individual cards, which they can choose to work on as capacity allows. They don't have to know the details of collected work tasks, and they can focus on one or a few tasks at a time. The beauty of the Kanban board is its flexibility. It can be customized by the team. They can choose to make it as simple or as complex as they want by adding columns for life cycle phases, different colored cards, and swim lanes, helping the team focus on the tasks they own. In Kansas today, this method works well for Hunk, the farmhand who has so much to do but can't focus and prioritize. With the Kanban board, he can see all the work and pull the tasks one at a time, allowing him to do his work more effectively. He can check the board, see what's the next priority, complete it, and then go back for another. Our second Agile-based methodology we included is Scrum. Its board may look similar to Kanban, but there are many distinct differences. Scrum applies a much more structured approach than Kanban, but more flexible than some traditional methods such as Waterfall and Prince2. Key principles of Scrum include shorter, repeatable cycles for doing the work, heavy involvement of the customer, the self-organizing team which takes ownership for the sprint deliverables. The benefit of Scrum, as many of you are aware, is its flexibility to deal with change and the ability to flush out the details along the way with the customers weighing in as the work iterates. We believe this approach best fits with another Kansas farmhand, Zeke. Zeke requires some structure to help him overcome his fears and achieve his goal. Throughout the story in Kansas and in Oz, Zeke has to summon his courage, work with the team, and agree to take on the work needed. In Scrum, the team makes a commitment to what they can achieve together as they bravely work to address new challenges as they present themselves during any project. Lastly, we want to discuss the 4th methodology, Lean DMAIC, which we use to drive Six Sigma process improvement projects. At the university, there are various yellow, green, and black belt efforts using this method. It's an acronym for define, measure, analyze, improve and implement, and control. The characteristics of DMAIC include data-driven analysis, quality-minded focus with a goal to improve efficiency. We related the DMAIC process to Hickory, the 3rd Kansas farmhand, because it is driven by process and efficiency and not by the heart. So let's take a look at these 4 methodologies side by side. This chart gives us a nice overview of how they compare to each other for each of the project phases. Again, we are calling those who adhere to traditional rules and structured methodologies purists in order to prepare you for our discussion of blends. The unique traits for each methodology here can help highlight which one may work best for your next project. You will see later in the presentation how this chart serves as the starting point for identifying our methodology blends.
But let's face it, we live in Oz, a world of color. Project management is rarely, if ever, black and white, right? We're constantly juggling and adjusting things that change throughout our projects. It's a beautiful world that requires flexibility and a palette of multiple color options to provide our users with the best product or service. In project management, we do this by tailoring and blending methodologies to help provide our project teams with tools and structure that help them work most efficiently. As we headed over the rainbow to Oz, we found that we don't always follow pure methodology. We often tailor the methodologies to meet the needs of the project or the organization, typically skipping or changing a component. Thus, we embrace the buts, meaning I'm doing this methodology, but without this one element, or I'm using this methodology, but adding this one. For example, you're using Kanban, but without tight controls on WIP limits, which increases the likelihood of Scarecrow not knowing what to focus on. Maybe you're using Scrum, but having multiple product owners and epics not fully broken into discrete stories, which may increase the lion's inability to commit to completing his work in a single sprint. Maybe you're using Waterfall, but knowingly leaving some requirements undefined and without strong sponsorship, which leads the Dorothy types possibly proceeding down the wrong colored road. If you're using DMAIC, but without a grand vision or discrete efficiency goal, which risks the Tin Man types expending energy and time on a deliverable with minimal gains. So we just reviewed the options for when a small aspect of your methodology doesn't fit. However, sometimes the situation calls for multiple methods due to resource preferences, skill level, vendor involvement, and maybe technical limitations. As a result, a blended model may fit your needs better. For example, combining components of Scrum and Kanban gives you Scrumban. The part before the hyphen represents the method used for planning, and the part after the hyphen represents what you would do for execution and implementation. Combining components of Scrum and Waterfall would give you like Scrumfall, and combining components of DMAIC and Kanban gives you DMAIBan. These can all provide a much more colorful approach by adding the features from each methodology that best fit with the elements of your specific project and team. So let's talk about the key factors next, because this is what you need to look at to determine when and how to blend. So first, define the point of view to explain which perspective is driving the project, keeping the end in mind, looking across the landscape of the customer, team, and the project itself. Is your project being driven by the end user, organizational leaders, technology, or maybe something else? After that, you're going to look at these 6 general condition factors. So in planning, you'll look at requirements method. How are you collecting requirements? What type of requirements are needed? How complete are they up front? Then your schedule definition. How is your timeline determined? Do you have a hard deadline, or is it more nice to have time frame? Then in execution, you'll decide on your build method. What tasks are needed and how many dependencies are there? What's the best way to manage your tasks? Also in execution is testing. When will you test and what types of testing are needed? And you need to understand your delivery approach. Is this a big bang delivery, or is it going to be iterative and have multiple go lives throughout? Finally, when preparing to close the project, you have to determine your stabilizing and your closing phase, or the approach that you're going to take. When and how to stabilize those activities, and what types of controls are needed. Next, I'm going to give you 2 examples of some of the hybrids we've used. Okay, so Scrumfall. Scrumfall blends our Lion's approach for planning activities and then Dorothy's Waterfall to complete execution. For Scrumfall, the project's driven from the customer or user's point of view with a clear understanding of the business objectives. We see this clearly as the customers help turn requirements into user stories written from their perspective. Customers prioritize the work, which is then organized into a sequential release plan. The user stories and release plan then inform the design. The project then can move into a waterfall methodology as it begins execution, moving into a more linear periods of development, testing, and then closing with one big bang delivery. You may have noticed that for the execution phase, both Scrum and Waterfall are highlighted. This is because you may have to use Scrum for development and then Waterfall for testing and delivery, or you might use Scrum for both development and testing and then just have one big bang Waterfall delivery. The point is here that you have options based on your project factors. So our example of Scrumfall is a project called Student Activities Online. The goal of this project was to add enhancements to a product that's used by students to generate projects for their student clubs. This project began with a true Scrum approach. The team worked with the customer, writing stories, prioritizing them, and setting up sprints, retrospectives, and demos. The sprints were run for the majority of the project until at one point, leadership said, hey, we've now got a hard deadline. The project has to be complete, and they gave us a specific date. So we had to define what complete was, and the team reviewed the backlog to define those deliverables or stories, and then had to figure out if we could achieve it by that date. So we refined the estimates for the work and made a waterfall plan to deliver them. Okay, the next example is Waterbond. Waterbond blends our rule-following structured Kansas Girls waterfall methodology for planning and then Scarecrow's Kanban for execution. For Waterbond's point of view, this project is driven from the documented requirements or functional specs with a clear understanding of the end goal. The project is started with a work breakdown structure that is sequential and based on known requirements. Predecessors and dependencies are included in true waterfall fashion. Once the list of tasks is complete, each task is then transferred to a Kanban card, and the first group of cards moved into the in progress column. They're chosen by the team members, not the customer, but choices are limited because of the sequential order of the waterfall dependencies that were defined, in the work breakdown structure. So the example for the Waterbond hybrid is our Going Google project. The Going Google project migrated faculty and staff email and calendars from Exchange email boxes or mailboxes to Google's calendaring and Gmail. So Notre Dame used a vendor to assist with the migrations and started with the traditional RFP. The campus customers were not heavily involved in the technical aspects of the project up front, but they came in strong for change management. Most requirements were known up front, and the migration and cutover was planned for 2 dates, one for early adopters and one for everyone else. Once the project charter was written and the work breakdown structure was created, the team recognized that they wanted a way to access the project plan from home and across campus. Using the previous tool, team members were only able to view the plan when I displayed it through the projector at our meetings. So we decided to set up an electronic Kanban board to track the progress of the work so the team could view it from anywhere they were at. And they could also update their own task progress. It took some time to get all the team members to update their cards to follow some of the rules of Kanban, such as not pulling too many cards. But the team was happy with their ability to pull the cards and not have them pushed upon them, and with their ability to view and update it from anywhere.
But how do you know which way to go? How do you choose? Just like the Scarecrow says, all the ways are possible, sometimes even both ways work. To help make the decision, we narrowed the distinguishing characteristics between the methodologies down to 10 questions in a decision tool related to planning and execution. First, for planning. For each question, you consider your current project, the particular circumstances around each question, and check each applicable box or boxes. More than one answer is not uncommon. Behind the scenes, each response correlates to a particular methodology. For example, This project's level of customer participation ranged from often to sometimes. Once the planning questions are answered, you take the top scoring method or methods and consider them as the approach for planning. In this case, both Scrum and Kanban. For the execution, you repeat the process for those questions, again considering the nuances of your particular project. Once the questions are answered, take the top scoring methodologies and consider them as the approach for execution, primarily for the build and delivery approach, and in this case, Kanban. Once both sets are answered, you combine them to determine which methods to choose from, either a blend or a pure model. And then, if a blend, you use the blend matrix to dive deeper into the details of each blend and choose the best fit based on the remaining conditions of the project, team, and customer. This is where the art of our profession comes into play. In this example, there were two options to consider, a pure Kanban and a blended Scrumban. To choose, use the information in the matrix and the other more subjective aspects of the project and team dynamic, along with your own experience and familiarity with the different approaches. In this example, a decision was needed only with the planning approach, and there were two viable options. If Kanban planning is chosen, a pure Kanban methodology is indicated for the entire project. If Scrum planning is chosen, the blended Scrumban approach is suggested. For this particular project, the deciding factor was the level of comfort of the team and importance of the timeline. Therefore, the blend Scrumban was selected. However, there seems to be something missing. You may have noticed 3 key project success factors were not included. What we learned through creating this tool is that these apply to all the options. They are driven by the methodology, not driving the methodology. All right, it's time to practice. If everybody could go to the link that Sharon is pasting in chat, that is a Google template. So if you could click on that, it'll open up your own personal copy by default, and use this decision tool to practice answering the questions as we go through an example. So I'll give everybody a minute to open that, or less than a minute. All right, starting with planning. So we have a government data compliance project. The identified project team has worked together on several high-risk projects using multiple methods and have recently completed Agile training. A senior database administrator, a Ruby on Rails developer, and an expert on government data regulations are still being confirmed. The customer is identified, passionate, with limited availability, and has provided requirements to the best of their understanding to the project team of several discrete deliverables needed within a loose time frame, however, with an eventual overall government dictated deadline. So first question, what is the level of customer participation? Is it full, often, sometimes, or intermittent? Remember, the customer has limited availability. So use the decision tool and check the box for what you think the answer or answers are for that first question. Next question, what level of requirement details are needed? High, medium, or low? In this case, requirements have been provided to the best of the customer's ability. Third, are there any team methodology preferences or experiences? Waterfall, Lean Dynamic, Scrum, or Kanban? In this case, this project team has worked together before and they have just finished some Agile training.
That was a good hint.
Next, what is the primary project driver? Is it process, timeline, functionality, or is it new or unfamiliar? In this case, it's new and a regulation with a loose time frame with eventual overall one about 18 to 24 months away. And
May I
then
pop in
finally,
with a very quick question? I was gonna say, it looked like it showed up in the chat as well, which is, it looks like we all jumped into, it's a master copy that's read only. So I'm not sure if we need to, as it shows in the chat, save a copy to be able to edit it, or if there's something else we should do.
Yep, make a copy and that's yours.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so I'm gonna just stay on this screen for a little bit for those of you who hadn't gotten to that point to answer the 5 questions. Again, level of customer participation, level of requirement details, Are there any team methodology preferences or experiences? The primary project driver, and then if ongoing measures are required post-project. So that last question, are they required, recommended, optional, or not applicable? And in our example, nothing was said. And the question, the three items that apply regardless of the method chosen. So that is related to communication, change management. Oh, what was the third one? Do you remember, Sharon?
No, but I can go back and look. Hold on real quick. Testing. Communication change management is the first bullet, then testing, and then management commitment and buy-in.
All right, moving on. Execution questions. We're going to look at the execution aspects of this same project. So the team will be a mixture of skills and commitment and buy-in to the project, along with investigating a compliance consultant. Some team members are on other important projects. Currently, a few deliverables have hard deadlines along the way, while others do not, and there are some dependencies between them. So the first question is, what is the level of team oversight needed? High, medium, or low? Remembering that there's varying commitment to this project. Next, the ability to respond to change. Is it easy, moderate, or difficult? Government compliance exists with some delivery expectations along the way. Next, the level of dependencies within the project. Many, some, few. Fourth question, what is the level of third-party vendor management? High, medium, or low? So in this situation, there is a consultant, but that consultant has a compliance discipline. And then finally, what is the delivery approach? Is it iterative, constant flow, or is it big bang at the end? Keeping in mind there are some delivery expectations along the way. Okay, now that all 10 questions have been answered, let's see what our answers tell us about the best methodologies based on the information we have today. For planning, Kanban seems to be the better option. For execution, Scrum. As a result, a blend of Scrum seems to be the best overall methodology option. So for us, our blends utilize methodologies our project managers are currently familiar with. In the future, or at your own schools, you can expand the toolkit to include other methodologies. So far, we've been talking about following the yellow brick road, using the decision tool to head in one general direction. Sharon is now going to walk you through the proverbial bump in the road.
So as much as we plan, we often end up in a place we did not expect. Instead of suffering through the original methodology, it isn't always heroic to just stick it out. Sometimes you need to find a new way to get there. You choose a different direction instead of running. Maybe you do want to turn around and run, but we're now going to share how we did that very thing. So in this project called SAFE, which stands for Secure Authentication for Everyone, it was the implementation of two-step authentication at the University of Notre Dame. We provided authentication enhancements to our most sensitive services and enforced all students, faculty, staff, and affiliates to enroll. The project had several challenges come up that were not identified in early planning that caused a reevaluation of the methodology in order to meet the needs of the project, team members, and customers. So we started out using a waterfall methodology to identify tasks sequentially with the idea of enforcing all staff, faculty, students, and affiliates at one time. The decision tree ranked Waterfall and Kanban equally as the top choices, but we started off with Waterfall because we didn't have a strong cross-functional team that made up a strong Scrum team. But sometime deep into the planning phase, we discovered that we needed to do an upgrade to our current authentication service in order for two-step to work with our chosen two-step product. Due to the time constraint that this put on our timeline and the knowledge that the required resources were known to be difficult to secure, I decided to change to Scrum methodology because it would provide structure to keep the team committed and deliver the upgrade quickly. I was able to get 2 department managers to serve as the Scrum Master and the product owner, and so we gathered the team together and had our first sprint planning, and off we went. Once the upgrade was done, the Scrum Master was no longer available, and we were left with the work breakdown structure from before the upgrade, still in a waterfall project plan. But now I had a team that had discovered the value of using the daily stand-up meetings and the visual list to manage their tasks. Once the upgrade was done, we didn't have a hard go-live date requirement, as might drive a waterfall approach, and no need to reset the board as work progressed, as you would with Scrum. So it was decided to stay with an Agile approach and add some Kanban elements to the project methodology. Our visual board was no longer focused on the timing of the sprint. It was now focused on the different types of workflow, such as development, testing, communication, and so forth. Ultimately, we used a combination of Waterfall, Scrum, and Kanban to make the best use of our project resources and time, which resulted in a very successful project for everyone. Changing the methodology to include Agile practices enabled the team to become more involved in the owning and managing the work as a team, which may not have been the case had we stuck with the original Waterfall approach. So, we started today in Kansas with our purest methodologies, and we quickly recognized that most of us live and work in a world more like Oz. There are many colorful ways to run a project using blended methodologies to better serve our project teams and customers. Now that we've traveled down the yellow brick road and discovered a new way to look at project methodologies, it's time to get excited about taking home our new knowledge and trying it out. So, in order to help you take home the knowledge, we're going to do some exercise, and we're going to use polls here. So we're going to try and hope this works correctly. Since we know there's no place like home, we want you to get excited about this quiz. If I can figure out how to get there. Okay, so we're going to be using Zoom polls to get your answers. And I'm going to start the exercise, then I'll launch the poll. So we'll give this a try on the first one. So this is our first Ruby Slippers exercise. So for this first exercise, you've started your project using Scrum, but then your involved customers get pulled into another project, leaving your technical team to finish the work. All right, so here's the poll. Let's see. Exercise 1, launch. You should see it now. So go ahead and select the one that you think is best in this case. Okay, a couple more seconds. Kind of fun to watch it go up and down. Okay. All right, that looks like everybody's done. Oops. End poll and share results. Okay, ooh, it looks like kind of a tie here. Okay, so we got 55% that said Scrumfall and 41% that said Scrumban. Okay, so I'm not sure if that extra pop-up is still on your screen, but if it is, you can go ahead and X out. You can see here that Scrumban is the best answer, and that's because the technical team can use the Kanban board to track their remaining work, and without the customers, the customer prioritization and sprint planning and customer focused demos aren't needed anymore. So that's why Scrumban is the best answer. Okay. All right. Did that work okay? All right, I'm not seeing anybody say that they couldn't get the poll working, so we'll keep going. So for exercise number 2, you've started your project using Kanban, but then you get a new project sponsor who wants to see deliverable progress on her priority items. Okay, launch exercise number 2 poll. And launch. Okay. Watching these, does it influence people's answers? I wonder. Okay, I think that's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and end that one. Looks like 69% got Con Scrum, which we agree is the best answer. And the reason for that is because the customer or product owner can prioritize the backlog during sprint planning and iterate delivery releases along with showing the progress of those items in the burn down chart. All right, keep going here. And exercise number 3. All right, so for this one, we are starting out using Scrum, and then you get additional resources after your customer requests more demos and a shorter timeline. So they made that request and you get additional resources. What is the best answer here? Let's see here, poll. Oops, exercise 3, launch. Okay, there it comes. Got to click a few buttons there to get that going. Okay, a couple more seconds. If you don't get your answer in, that's okay. We're just trying to make you think it through, right? All right. All right, so 62% said stay the course. So that was clearly the winner, second to Scrumban. So we can go ahead and get rid of that poll. There we go. Okay, so stay the course is the right answer because customer demos are already a part of Scrum methodology and you can adjust your sprints to meet the shorter timeline requirement. So that works out perfectly. Okay, let's move on to exercise number 4. So for exercise number 4, you've started your project using Kanban again, but then you find out that the benefits of your project do not align with the EVP's newly announced university goals. So exercise 4, launch. This is not a trick question. Okay, I'm waiting until it hits like 50 and then I'm ending it. So that's kind of my waiting method here. Okay, yep, 69% said cancel the project. And that actually, in our opinion, is the correct answer. It's not a bad thing to cancel a project, especially if it doesn't align with the university's goals. So we don't want to spend hours and time and resources on something like that. So canceling the project is okay. Yeah, somebody's saying good luck canceling in my organization. That's probably true for a lot of us, but sometimes that's better. Okay, our final exercise, number 5. So now you've started your project using Waterfall, but then your customers ask to have products reviewed and released as they become available. All right, let me get this last poll launched for you. 5, there you go. Okay. Wow, this one's even the biggest yet. 90% picked Water Scrum, and that is the best answer. So the Water Scrum is the best answer because in each sprint planning meeting, you can plan to have deployable products ready to be demoed and released by the end of each sprint. So that is the best answer. Okay, so hopefully those exercises helped with some of the understanding as well. And we hope this presentation has helped you see how using the decision tool and those key factors we talked about can help you better identify the project methodology that will work best for your unique project. now you can take the color back to your own Kansas. Thank you so much for your time today, and we are going to now take questions.
Sharon, there was a question back a while ago about,
Okay.
it was back on example or exercise 2 about why not Scrum Fall.
Oh, exercise 2.
I think
Okay.
it was slide 37.
Yep. Let me quickly go back here. Sorry. And while we're going back to it, because I've got
I have it on
Maybe
the
it was a
screen.
different slide. No, that was
number
it.
2. Okay, so it's the new project sponsor wants to see deliverable progress on her priority items. Is that
Is
the
this
right
the right
slide?
one, Ed, or was it the one before this? I thought it was exercise 2. Maybe it was
No,
exercise 1.
It was one of the options was Scrum Bond, the other was Scrum Fall.
Okay, so it's probably number 1.
Yep,
Yep,
must have been
that's it.
exercise 1.
Yeah, so I think in that one it was a pretty close in the poll. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was the closest one because definitely there are some things about Scrum Fall and Scrum Bond that might work. We just felt like this one was the best answer. And when you use a Kanban board, if you have just a technical team working and you don't have the customers, you know, the whole oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought it's Scrum Fall that you thought. Is that right?
Correct, yeah, that was the
Okay.
question.
Scrum Fall. So we still think that the technical team would want to continue to manage their own work, move their cards through Kanban, and going back to a traditional waterfall, depending on the other project factors, we're only looking at one here, but it's not that it's a wrong answer, it just wasn't the best answer.
Is the likelihood that it's nuanced in the fact that waterfall tends to have dependencies, whereas maybe there aren't any obvious dependencies at this point? So Kanban is just allowing the team to work things and potentially in parallel?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that could be a part of it. I think the whole point here, you know, if you just look at it from a higher position, is that the flexibility of doing the hybrid methodologies allows you to decide based on your factors. You know, we're talking about one factor and that one factor change, but there could be other things, your team preference, there could be technology reasons. There's a lot of different factors. So those key factors we looked at earlier are really important to understand. That's how you can answer the questions in the tool. You know, if you don't have some of that information, sometimes it's harder to make a decision.
And in this particular exercise, because it started with Scrum, there's an implied assumption that the work is not sequential, which is
Right.
typically what you see with a waterfall scenario. So because it was Scrum, it implies not sequential. So thus the need to have more of a sequential controlled big bang approach isn't necessarily the obvious move in this direction, given the conditions that the project is under at this point of change.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a question from the operational side of this and kind of going back to where you started, because where I'm at right now, we're doing a lot of work on our intake processes, which is capturing that request up front, and then which eventually leads to the kickoff of a project. Is this something you do for, you know, that you deliberately do for each new project as it comes in? And if so, when do you do that in the timeline? And how do you address the actual task? I don't want to call it exercise task.
So we encourage kickoffs for all projects, regardless of the methodology. And if you keep in mind, the purpose of the kickoff is to pull the team together and to orient them to why they're there, right? Start with the why. Why are we doing the project? What are the objectives around it? So you want to get that emotional commitment to the purpose of the project, to understand who the players are, what the different roles are, as well as introducing them to whatever methodology or methodology combinations that you actually want to do. So we will typically do that after some initial like scoping by the project manager to understand actually what the big picture is, so that the information in the kickoff is meaningful and is structured at a point where, okay, now we need team members to weigh in on the nuances for their particular scope or the deliverable items or additional risks and things like that.
Great, thank you.
So the decision tool and the blend matrix, the links are on the screen. And Sharon, I think you were going to paste them in the chat as well. I don't know if you already happened. So I saw earlier the request for the blends, and so it is there. I think it's a PDF as well.
The blends is asking us for access or to request access. So whoever owns it's probably getting a lot of access requests.
That's supposed to be public.
I was just warning you.
Yes, that is supposed to be public. So Sharon, I think that's in the PMO toolkit.
Yeah, let me copy it. Let me just try it again.
Yeah, just change it to anyone with the link. I wonder if it recently changed since we last tested this.
Maybe
Well,
you
I'm
moved it
wondering
into a different folder with different permissions, or
Yeah, let me check here. I've got it coming up. Yeah.
Want to have any other questions that they'd like to ask while she's checking on that?
Yep.
Then I guess I will ask, Michelle and Sharon, I came across the chat early on and we've sort of made the assumption that you're willing to let us share this as part of our PMCG templates area, where we're trying to pull together some best of breed stuff. And we were doing it on our Google site before, but this is something that we're actually moving into our Educause Connect library. So we're setting up structure there. So for everybody who's participating today, we're working it so that you can actually share your templates yourself. You don't have to go through us and review moving forward, but we're working on getting the ones we had previously ported over to the new environment, and we will see to it that we get these added out there as well. It's great information.
I have a question about Educause Connect. I was away, and just the other day I saw the email requesting to to log in and do whatever we need to do in order to be ported over on our groups. So I think now it was already done. So how do I go by so I don't lose my groups and access?
I think they were automatically ported over. It depends on where your profile was, but if I was you, I would probably go to connect.educause.edu and we can post that in there. And then once you click sign in or log in at the top, you should possibly use your Schools Federated or use your Educause login to get in there. And you should be able to click the groups and see your list under the community, all your different groups that you belong to. If not, you can always go back and join them again if by chance you lost your groups.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
we have one person raising their hand, and Vernon also asked a question in the chat here. Vernon, let's go with your question first. I'm not sure who was first, but how big is your PMO, and does it govern IT projects only or other departments as well?
So our PMO is it 10 now? I think it's 10. I think we have 10. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry, I'm still checking the link.
Does it govern IT projects only or other departments as well?
So technically, yes. Mainly, we call them IT projects, but we have projects. Let me just describe them because I'm not sure how to answer. We have projects that cover all the different departments. As long as they have a technology component, then we consider them our projects. Somebody in a different department might say differently, but we try to get involved in all the things that have a technology component. So we are managing projects with all the different departments across campus.
Great, thank you, Sharon.
If that answers.
Robert Merrill.
Yeah. I deal a lot with estimation and uncertainty and risk. And how do you weigh factors of, at the beginning of a project, what's uncertain versus where there is tolerance for uncertainty.
Mhm.
In other words, very often we have we really don't know what they want. They really don't know what they want. We really don't know how long it's going to take, but the date is firm. Or no, we have to have this set of features because it's a compliance project.
Mhm.
And it's that uncertainty that really weighs heavily on our choices, because we do this informally. This is a great tool, by the way.
Mhm.
It
Thank
lays
you.
it all out.
Yeah, I think let me start, Michelle, and then you can jump in. My first thought when you asked the question is that this is why doing this tool and this methodology hybrid is great, because we do have so many unknowns in the beginning,
Mhm.
right? So I think it feels good to know that if something comes up that really throws your methodology for a loop, or it's just not working, you know, this is a way that you can change and not stress everybody out. It's okay to change. We start with that in mind, right?
Yeah.
We don't, and the flexibility is one of the big benefits.
So, I mean, uncertainty is the crux behind why Agile is as popular and pervasive as it is. As the level of information that you know that you can count on at the beginning is less and less certain. So in Agile practices, they use the estimating technique called planning poker, right? Where you use the Fibonacci sequence to story point things. So what we distilled it down to, because that was just a concept that was just blowing some of our technologists' mind, like, is that we basically said, okay, of all the stuff, what is the easiest thing to do?
Mhm.
And that was a 1. Okay, so then this other thing, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge and expertise in the room, right? Like, trust your gut. What do you think this is? Is this 10 times more difficult, 100 times more difficult? And then you give it that, and then you go with that. Because as you go through sprints, or as you go through, you know, timeline phases, or whatever approach that you're trying to take, there's always the opportunity to refine it and to dive deeper into it and get better at it. But you have to kind of do the comparative way of doing it versus trying to say that's 16 hours, that's 32 hours, or that's 1 week. Do it more in comparison to the smallest thing. Now, if you have different skill sets on the team and they're not used to working together, or they're unfamiliar with the smallest thing, then find the smallest thing per discipline and then work it together like that. And be okay with ambiguity. Like, that's part of the power, is that it's that freedom to just try and start. And with the changing direction, like, if you have teams that are like, I don't want to do this newfangled stuff, say, well, can you just try it for a month? Let's see how it goes, and then adjust as you go. It is really easy for people to say, fine, I'll try it for a month, but then you have to live up to that promise of, in a month, say, okay, everybody, how's it going? Do we need to make any changes? Do you want to do more, do less? And then actually live up to that. That has actually got all of our infrastructure people on board, including some of our networking folks. I mean, it's a way of showing that buy-in and that commitment to what matters to them. If they trust you for just a little, give me a little bit of trust to try it out, and I will live up to that trust that you've instilled in me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I think we have time maybe for one more question. And it looks like you've got quite a few here in the chat, and we have someone raising their hand. But the next one coming in here was, with Agile, service ownership, matrixed orgs, and DevOps on the rise, how do you see this impacting PMO operations and project methodologies on individual projects being chosen?
That's a good question. So let me just repeat the question to make sure I understand it. So what we're looking at is when we are choosing projects. So when we're prioritizing projects across our portfolio, is that the question? Like, how does this impact how they're prioritized, or when they say chosen? I'm assuming that's what's meant here. I don't know that it does, because well, it depends on how your prioritization is done. If your prioritization is done before a project manager is assigned and this tool is used, or if
I might be reading into it, and Matt Hooley, I think if you want to chime in here, but I know that one of the challenges that we even have within our PMO is this idea that we're never be able to really truly do dedicated teams on projects that are Scrum or Scrum based.
Yeah.
And so there's always this shuffling and trying to just balance competing project types and still be effective. And we know that at the core of Scrum, you have dedicated self-organizing teams. That's not exactly the case in organizations. Hence things like SAFe, Scrum at scale. And
I think when we first rolled out Agile, we had like one example where we had a dedicated team, and then that stopped. And in the last decade, we've very rarely had dedicated teams. So, I mean, even when we moved to AWS, like we only had half-time commitment for that. So what you do is then more structuring the work so that people can focus. So I'm a huge advocate of working session times for, like, all right, every Tuesday and Thursday, that is this project's time. And the other days you go do other things, but we're going to focus. And so it's a way of trying to get the elements that a dedicated team offer, which is less distractions, focused, working together, developing relationships with each other. And how can you do that within the limits of the fact that you don't get whole people for concentrated amounts of times? And we have pretty good success with that, but it requires discipline. It requires negotiation with the managers of the team members. And so that's where the role of the project manager is still really, really valuable, because sometimes you play the role of the Scrum Master, but in other times you're just trying to like get the resources and clear the way so that they can actually focus time, get them additional people and things like that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, I'm not, did she say Matt? I didn't quite, I didn't
Matt
see.
Hooley.
Yeah,
Matt,
Matt,
are
did
you
that
still on
answer
the
your
call? Did that
question or?
answer?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the response and thanks for the philosophical question.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes. A dedicated, co-located team and their focus is working on that. That's nirvana.
Right.
Just doesn't happen, right? Like, so you're always going to be less than that. But at some point, if you don't have an organization that's going to do that, you kind of just got to let that go and work on the good enough and what can we get, and set expectations accordingly.
Nice. Thank you so much, Michelle and Sharon. We do have about 2 minutes left here, Lisa, if you'd like to wrap us up. But Sharon and Michelle, is there anywhere that if folks still had questions that were unanswered, they can contact you or forward something, or we would encourage you to even do a connect channel discussion.
I was hoping to say that if anybody has additional questions or would like to have a further conversation, to post a new discussion out in the Educause Connect platform. I'm sure all of us will hop in. Hopefully Sharon or Michelle would hop in and discuss that out there, but there's also their email addresses if you'd like to contact them directly.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, let me just share my screen quickly. Not much left, just a reminder that we're always looking for volunteer presenters and panelists. If you have a topic related to project management that you're passionate about, we'd love to have you present at one of our monthly webinars. Don't forget that the October webinar is really the Educause annual conference. If you're going to be in person in Philadelphia, look to connect with us at our meeting on Wednesday morning, our poster session, or watch for some announcements. We're trying to get together some networking activities. If you're attending the online conference, we're going to be, not determined, we are going to be having a single poster session on Wednesday at 1:15. Don't forget to check out the new Educause Connect, connect.educause.edu. Just search for PMCG or project management and you'll find all of our materials, and know that we've just kind of got a starter set out there and that we're continuing to add to the library. We encourage everybody to start a discussion. Yeah. And thank you for coming, and thank you very much to Sharon and Michelle. It was a fabulous presentation. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Thank you.